Segment 1, Night 1, Harold and Evelyn Brooks. Harold Brooks, 64, and his wife Evelyn, 62, moved through the narrow stone path leading to the old church in Glenfinnan, their steps silent on the damp cobblestones. Fog clung low to the ground, curling around the gravestones like wisps of smoke. Both wore black coats and leather gloves, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses despite the cloudy spring morning. The church was ancient, its weathered walls heavy with moss, and its spire pierced the low-hanging mist. Inside, the air smelled faintly of candle wax and damp wood, and the echoes of whispered prayers reverberated softly across the pews. The funeral was private. Only a few hushed attendees, all distant relatives or old friends, kept their eyes on the small coffin. Harold's hands, clasped in front of him, tightened around the folded piece of black cloth he carried, a folded scarf from decades past. Evelyn's gaze remained fixed on the floor, her expression serene but distant, concealing a tension that vibrated beneath her calm exterior. They did not speak. They did not mingle. To any observer, they were simply mourners, quiet and respectful, but beneath that calm, an unspoken plan lingered, a resolve set 3 weeks in motion. After the final toll of the ancient bell, they stepped back into the misty morning, the echo fading into the sound of distant water from the River Morriston. Cameras at the church entrance, meant for security, recorded 2 dark figures moving toward a gleaming white Ford Sierra parked inconspicuously at the edge of the lot. The vehicle had been chosen with meticulous care, unassuming yet untraceable for all practical purposes. Its white paint reflected the muted light, and the engine emitted a low, steady hum, blending with the rhythmic lapping of the river nearby. They approached it silently, unlocking the doors with a subtle click that could have gone unnoticed. Harold settled into the driver's seat, Evelyn sliding into the passenger side, both maintaining that stoic composure that had become their armor over decades. Inside, the air smelled faintly of leather polish and damp fog drawn from the highlands. Their hands brushed only to close the doors firmly, no words were exchanged, only a mutual understanding that the day ahead would alter everything. The car moved off along the narrow village lane, fog curling over the headlights, the tires barely audible against the wet cobblestones. The A87 loomed ahead like a serpent in the mist, a long stretch of road that would wind through the highlands, twisting through mountains and marshes, a place where the presence of any other soul could scarcely be felt. Harold's grip on the steering wheel was steady, the same precision that had guided him through decades of careful living. Evelyn watched the fog swallow the village behind them, a faint chill crawling up her spine, though she could not admit to fear. In their minds, a sequence of events had already begun. Cameras at the ferry terminal 3 weeks later would catch only a blur of 2 figures in a white Sierra crossing into Northern Ireland at 2:14 a.m., faces obscured, identity unconfirmed. But in that moment, none of that mattered. The river, the fog, the ancient landscape, they were witnesses to a secret only the couple and, perhaps unknowingly, the road itself would remember. Harold adjusted the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind them. Only the blur of fog and the skeletal outlines of the mountains. Evelyn, tracing a finger along the window glass, pressed lightly to the mist, leaving a fleeting mark that evaporated almost immediately. She had packed nothing but the essentials, passports, cash, a small notebook of addresses long since abandoned. All else, their home, their belongings, the remnants of a life, was left behind, hollowed out, waiting silently for someone to notice. Yet, what would be noticed first was absence, missing doors on closets, untouched keys, and a silent answering machine that had already erased the echoes of their last calls. Every step was measured, every turn premeditated, yet the air hummed with a subtle, omnipresent tension. The highlands had a way of swallowing sound and presence alike, and the couple knew it. They drove on, merging into the white-blanketed landscape, disappearing slowly into the spine of the Devil's Road, as though the mist itself were guiding them into its embrace. The Ford Sierra hugged the narrow lanes that fed into the A87, the Devil's Spine of the Highlands, where the road wound like a knife's edge between dark marshes and jagged peaks. Fog thickened as they ascended, tendrils curling around the headlights like ghostly fingers. The world outside the windows had grown silent, save for the low hum of the engine and the occasional splash of rain across the glass. Evelyn kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes scanning the murky outlines of trees that flickered past, while Harold's focus never wavered from the road ahead. Each bend was a test of precision, each shadow a potential harbinger. The road seemed endless, and with every mile, they felt themselves swallowed deeper into a world that had no witnesses. By late morning, the Sierra had left Glenfinnan behind, traversing stretches of the highlands where civilization felt like a distant memory. The only signs of life were occasional cattle hidden in fog-shrouded pastures and the faint outlines of abandoned cottages. Their movements were deliberate, silent, calculated. Harold adjusted the mirrors, nothing trailed them. Yet a sense of being watched had settled into the corners of the cabin, an unspoken awareness that the road itself was a silent accomplice. Evelyn's fingers itched toward the leather gloves she wore, a protective gesture she had performed unconsciously since childhood, a habit born of a lifetime in which caution had been survival. They both knew that beyond this stretch, signals faded, phone lines went dead, radio interference hissed, and the night could arrive at any moment, even at mid-morning. As evening approached, the Sierra approached the edge of the River Morriston. Here, the road narrowed, bordered by marshes and treacherous undergrowth. Harold slowed, eyes scanning for anomalies, for any hint of another car, a roadblock, or worse, a trap. The river lay low and dark, mirroring the sky, a ribbon of ink flowing silently beneath ancient stone bridges. Here, time felt suspended, stretched taut by anticipation. They were alone, yet every shadow seemed to twitch with life, every ripple of water a whisper of warning. Evelyn's eyes lingered on the riverbank. She imagined it emptying into a void, a perfect hiding place where something, or someone, could vanish without trace. By nightfall, the couple had crossed the stretches of road with only faint lights in the distance marking the presence of other travelers. Cameras on the Stornoway to Belfast ferry would later show two indistinct figures in a white car rolling silently onto the deck at 2:14 a.m., faces obscured, identities impossible to confirm. In the Sierra, Harold and Evelyn were aware only of each other and the road stretching before them, the car's tires cutting wet lines into the fog-drenched asphalt. They spoke in murmurs, discussing nothing of consequence, yet every word was laden with tension. Somewhere ahead, the road seemed to vanish into blackness, its edges blurred by mist and shadow, as if swallowing the vehicle whole. As later, the vehicle disappeared from all known tracking points. The highlands held its breath. There was no witness, no flare, no sound beyond the whisper of tires on wet asphalt. The white Ford Sierra, once gleaming under the morning mist, became a ghost against the dark hills. At the River Morriston, locals would recall nothing the following week except the odd reflection of headlights on the water and the low rumble of an engine fading into silence. When the car was finally recovered, 3 weeks later, it lay 20 meters beneath the water, doors ajar, empty, as though its passengers had been plucked from existence. The glove compartment held remnants of what they had brought, the wallet, cash, and passports intact, yet the spare keys were missing. The driver's seat was stained with the faint residue of dried blood, type O+, confirming Harold's presence at the wheel, yet there was no other trace of them. Even now, the car was not merely abandoned, it carried a message. On the trunk, etched into the metal as if by deliberate hand, were the words, "See you on the spine." It was an assertion of ownership over the road, a chilling signature left by some unknown hand. The highlands, in all their vastness, seemed to have conspired with this vanishing act. Anyone who approached the river at night would feel the cold mist cling to their skin, the hush of the landscape pressing in, as though the road itself remembered. Harold and Evelyn were gone, but the memory of their disappearance lingered, a ghostly presence on the devil's spine, warning all who traveled there that not everything, or everyone, reaches the end of the road intact. 3 weeks later, the quiet village of Glenfinnan was stirred not by voices, but by the rippling tension of absence. Maisie and Nell Trent, Evelyn's sisters, had grown increasingly anxious, calling repeatedly without response. When the calls went unanswered, they contacted the Garda Scotland, initiating a search that would soon ripple through the highlands. Officers arrived at the Brooks' modest home, now eerily hollowed. Drawers once full of clothes lay bare, only a few old garments remaining, as though the family had evaporated from existence. Passports and £2,000 in cash sat undisturbed on the kitchen counter. The spare car keys were gone. Their answering machine, which might have held vital clues, had been wiped clean, every message vanished without trace. Even the faintest imprint of normalcy had been stripped away, leaving a vacuum of uncertainty. The investigation extended along the A87 and beyond. CCTV footage from the Stornoway to Belfast ferry finally gave the first hints. A white Ford Sierra, its lights cutting through the fog like a pale phantom, crossed into Northern Ireland at precisely 2:14 a.m. Two indistinct figures occupied the vehicle, faces obscured, identities unconfirmed. This spectral journey captured only the faintest shadow of Harold and Evelyn. Meanwhile, local witnesses like Mary Ellison, a French tourist passing through the airport months later, recalled noticing a man with leather gloves and a woman whose face was hidden beneath heavy white makeup, each staring unblinkingly at her as though testing reality itself. Even this memory, vague and disjointed, lent a sense of menace to an already chilling story. The River Morriston became the locus of the unanswered questions. When divers finally explored its depths, they found the Sierra submerged 20 meters beneath the surface, doors ajar as if its occupants had simply walked away into the water. Yet inside, nothing remained, no bodies, no personal effects beyond the essentials that had been left at home. The driver's seat, however, bore a telltale smear of dried blood, O positive, unmistakably Harold's. And on the trunk, someone had etched a message that seemed to mock the investigators and the grieving families alike: "See you on the spine." The words radiated menace, suggesting that the road itself was not merely a conduit but a stage for something larger, something that had claimed Harold and Evelyn as its own. The aftermath rippled further. Maisie and Nell Trent were left with an absence that could not be reconciled, with homes hollowed, belongings missing, and questions that would never yield answers. Newspapers reported the disappearance with sparse detail, emphasizing the mysterious empty car and the lack of physical evidence. Conversations in local pubs hinted at superstition: a white ghost car, a road that swallowed travelers, a curse that lingered on the A87. Yet investigators kept the case open, haunted by the enigma of vanished individuals and the subtle, sinister clues left behind: a bloodstain, a cryptic inscription, a route traced by fog and fear. By the time the investigation had cooled, the Devil's Spine had resumed its quiet dominance. The road twisted and turned through mountains and marshes as if nothing had occurred. Yet those familiar with its bends and shadows whispered of a presence, of a watchfulness that waited in the mist. Harold and Evelyn were gone, swallowed by the highlands and the White Sierra that no longer belonged to the living world. In the silence that followed, the message remained, etched in metal and memory: "See you on the spine." And as investigators, families, and locals looked upon the road, they understood that this was more than disappearance, it was a warning. The Devil's Spine was patient, and those who traversed it unawares might never emerge unchanged, or emerge at all. Segment 2, Night 2, The Devil's Stop. The narrow ribbon of the A87 stretched endlessly before James and Chloe Harper, the headlights of their VW camper slicing through the dense fog that rolled over the highland marshes. The evening air was thick and cold, carrying the scent of damp peat and the faint tang of burning wood from distant cottages. James, 29, drove with a tense focus, glancing at the rearview mirror more frequently than usual, while Chloe, 27, sat beside him, clutching a small backpack, the soft hum of the camper's heater doing little to soothe her unease. The road had no lights, no passing cars, and for the past 30 minutes, no sign of human life. They had expected solitude, but the silence now felt oppressive, alive with the anticipation of something unseen. At precisely 19:30, a white Land Cruiser appeared in the fog behind them, headlights dimmed to a low glow. Its sudden presence was almost spectral, and it crept along the shoulder, maintaining an eerie distance. James slowed, squinting into the fog, and the vehicle mirrored every turn of their camper as though anticipating their movements. Chloe's eyes widened. "James, do you see that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the camper's soft engine hum. He nodded, swallowing unease, trying to convince both himself and her that it was merely another traveler. But the Land Cruiser was not ordinary, it seemed to watch, to shadow them, a predator hidden in the mist. The cruiser's driver, Vincent Malley, 45, maintained an unsettling composure. His eyes, barely visible through the dim light, were sharp and calculating. James instinctively slowed the VW camper onto the soft shoulder near a clump of heather. The fog thickened, enveloping the vehicles in a pale grey curtain, isolating them from the highlands as if the rest of the world had been erased. Vince rolled down the tinted window, and a voice, low and measured, filtered through the fog. "Smoke under your car. Flames." The words were calm but precise, an assertion of control. James's brow furrowed. He had noticed no smoke, no fire. Yet the aura of authority in the stranger's voice carried an implicit threat, one that made even the stillness of the fog feel like a trap. James stepped out, the chill biting at his skin, and moved cautiously toward the rear of the VW camper. Chloe stayed inside, peering through the fogged window, heart pounding. The ground beneath James was soft and uneven, a mixture of moss, peat, and hidden puddles that threatened to swallow an unsuspecting foot. Then, without warning, the deafening crack of a .357 revolver shattered the night. James never screamed. His body collapsed instantly, the rifle's precision leaving no room for hesitation or error. Chloe's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a scream, as her eyes sought any sign of what had happened. The Land Cruiser's silhouette remained still in the mist, a ghostly presence observing, waiting. Chloe's terror escalated when the driver's door of the Land Cruiser opened. The interior emitted a shadowy mechanical whir, and she realized in horror that the rear compartment had been modified, a concealed cage, secured with improvised restraints. Her backpack was yanked from the camper floor. She barely had time to comprehend that her wrists were being bound with cable and padlock, her arms pulled through a narrow opening into the metal enclosure. The fog wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She could hear Vince's low, methodical commands, but the words were indistinct, blending with the sound of her own rapid breathing. Panic surged through her veins as she understood the finality of the moment. This was no ordinary highway stop. They were trapped on the spine. The VW camper, now abandoned and silent, stood as a haunting testament to James's sudden disappearance. Chloe, restrained, pressed her body against the cold metal of the cage, the smell of damp steel and leather filling her nostrils. The distant roar of a Gila hunting dog echoed through the mist, its red coat barely visible, but its scent masked by the mud Chloe had smeared across her clothes in a desperate, instinctive act. Every fiber of her being screamed to escape, yet Vince's calm efficiency left no room for resistance. She began calculating, breath by breath, the precise movements needed to wriggle free, knowing that a single mistake could mean she would suffer the same fate as James. In that moment, the Highland night was no longer just a backdrop, it had become a theater of terror, with every shadow and sound conspiring against her. The seconds stretched like hours as Chloe writhed inside the narrow confines of the Land Cruiser's hidden compartment. Her hands, bound with improvised cable restraints, were raw and chafed, but adrenaline lent her strength. Each shallow breath fogged the small air pocket, mingling with the scent of cold steel and damp leather. The Gila dog barked sharply outside, its paws crunching softly on the mist-covered undergrowth, yet its acute senses were thwarted by the mud Chloe had smeared across herself, masking her presence. She twisted her wrists, maneuvered her shoulders, and in one desperate motion, bit through the thin cable near the padlock. Her teeth broke the restraint with a muted snap, and she exhaled a shaky sigh as she felt freedom in her fingers for the first time in minutes. Crawling through the narrow opening, Chloe emerged into the foggy Scottish night. The mist clung to her soaked hair and mud-smeared jacket, providing a natural camouflage as she pressed against the heather and bracken. Every step was deliberate, her boots silent against the soft ground, ears straining for any hint of pursuit. The Land Cruiser remained ominously still, its engine off, as if the predator had vanished temporarily, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The forest was a labyrinth of twisted roots and treacherous marshes. One misstep could leave her trapped or worse. Yet the fear sharpened her instincts, and she navigated with precision, slipping through low branches, crouching beneath gnarled trees, and moving as silently as a shadow in the night. After 6 tense hours, Chloe reached a small clearing near the edge of a stream, exhausted, trembling, yet alive. She paused to assess the scene, her lungs burning and muscles trembling. In the distance, the remnants of the VW camper were partially visible through the fog, dragged 100 meters into the forest and reduced to a charred skeleton. The acrid smell of smoke mingled with the earthy dampness of the moor, a stark reminder of James's fate. Bloodstains marked the soft soil near the vehicle, a vivid testament to the violence that had unfolded. Chloe's eyes darted over the footprints, noting that most were obscured by the wet moss and mud. Among them, the prints of a size 11 military-style boot stood out, crisp, deliberate, and completely incongruous with any other tracks. The local tracker who later documented these prints would describe them as hauntingly precise, almost as though left by an entity that existed beyond ordinary human constraints. Chloe pressed herself against the undergrowth, observing the Land Cruiser from a distance. The vehicle's silhouette appeared monstrous in the fog, its hidden compartment now open, a grim reminder of the cage that had almost claimed her life. She noted subtle details, the scuff marks on the doors, traces of dried mud on the tires, and the faint metallic sheen along the edges of the modified interior. Each clue whispered a story of methodical cruelty, an obsessive precision that chilled her to the bone. Despite the terror, her mind worked with crystalline clarity, piecing together the sequence of events. The shooter, the hidden cage, the dog, all components of a predatory system designed to strike fear and enforce control. Vince Malley was no ordinary criminal, he was a hunter of the highest order, familiar with the terrain, the road, and the instincts of his prey. As dawn approached, Chloe's vantage point provided an unsettling clarity. The forest itself seemed complicit, the fog weaving between trees and rocks like a sentient shroud. From her temporary refuge, she observed patterns, the way the light caught on the puddles, the subtle shifts in shadows, the unintentional marks left by her assailant. Every detail was etched into her memory, a map that could be recalled when the authorities arrived. Soon, when investigators combed the area, they would find the burned remains of the VW camper, James's bloodstained spot on the soft moss, and Chloe's own footprint trail, intermingled with the size 11 boots. The DNA on the improvised cuffs and her blood-soaked clothing would later point directly to Vince, but at that moment, Chloe had no certainty beyond the instinct to survive. The road stretched endlessly in either direction, shrouded in fog, with the faint roar of distant water and the whisper of wind through the bracken, reminding her that the highlands were vast, patient, and merciless. By early morning, Chloe had found a temporary sanctuary among the dense heather and twisted roots near the roadside. Her clothing was caked with mud, her hands bruised and scraped from the struggle inside the Land Cruiser, but she was alive. She waited in silence, listening to the faint rustle of the forest and the distant barking of Vince's healer, aware that any movement might betray her location. Gradually, the first pale fingers of dawn touched the horizon, filtering through the fog in thin, silver streams. Chloe moved cautiously toward the main road, noting landmarks, rock formations, puddles, and subtle curves, creating a mental map for herself. She had survived the night by instinct, using the highlands themselves as camouflage. Once safe near the roadside, Chloe flagged down a passing vehicle, a local forest patrolman who, recognizing her distress, radioed for immediate assistance. Police response was swift, forensic teams scoured the forest for evidence. The burnt skeleton of the VW camper, the blood-stained patch of moss marking James's death, and the partial boot prints left in the mud painted a chilling tableau. Chloe's DNA on the improvised restraints, coupled with traces of Vince's fingerprints on the cage and nearby surfaces, created an irrefutable trail. Military-sized boots, mud patterns, and subtle marks confirmed the meticulous orchestration of the crime. Investigators immediately recognized that this was not an ordinary attack. Vince Malley had carefully staged every aspect of the abduction and killing, using the remote highlands to his advantage, leaving a ghost trail that seemed almost impossible to trace. The authorities traced Vince through a combination of eyewitness reports and DNA evidence. He had been transporting drugs across the Stornoway Dairy Ferry, his Land Cruiser fitted with multiple concealments for illicit cargo, and for human prey. When police intercepted him, the confrontation was tense. Vince's demeanor remained calm and unnervingly confident, his eyes glinting with a mixture of amusement and menace. During questioning, his calculated answers hinted at pride in his crimes, particularly in the disappearances along the spine. "You'll never find the boy," he sneered, referring to James. "He's part of the spine now." His nonchalance only deepened the horror for Chloe and investigators alike. A subsequent allergy test added a subtle contradiction. Vince claimed he had bought chicken for his dog at a remote fuel station, yet he suffered a severe reaction to poultry, raising further questions about his honesty and his methods. The trial, held in 2018, was marked by Chloe's testimony and the forensic trail meticulously reconstructed by police. In the courtroom, under dim lighting and a thin Scottish sun streaming through high windows, Chloe identified Vince in the shadowy gallery, her eyes sharp despite months of trauma. DNA evidence from the cable restraints, blood-stained clothing, and tire tracks left near the burned VW camper corroborated her story. Vince's smugness evaporated under scrutiny, and the jury delivered a guilty verdict. He received a life sentence, 30 years without parole, but his final words to Chloe and the court left a lingering chill. The spine was patient, and its next season awaited. Yet the devil's stop was not fully closed. The burned vehicle, the marshes, and the faint boot prints remained as spectral reminders that the Highland Road had claimed another victim. Chloe, though alive, carried the weight of the night, a psychological imprint that would never fade. The A87, twisting through marshes, mountains, and fog, had once again revealed its secret. The road belonged to predators who understood its secrets, and anyone who ventured unprepared could vanish as if swallowed by the landscape itself. And above all, etched into memory and metal alike, remained the ominous message from the previous victims: "See you on the spine." Segment 3, Night 3, The Spine's Next Victim. The highlands stretched endlessly under a silver fog, as if the mountains themselves exhaled cold mist to cloak the A87. Liam Callahan, 32, a solo traveler and avid hiker, had parked his small rental car at the trailhead near Glencoe, eager for a night under the stars. He was unaware of the chain of disappearances that had unfolded months earlier: the white Ford Sierra, the burned VW camper, and the spectral presence of Vince Malley's hunting grounds. The road behind him was quiet, almost unnervingly so, with only the faint howl of distant wildlife breaking the stillness. The air was damp and heavy, clinging to his jacket and dampening the faint glow of the car's interior. As he adjusted his pack and tightened the straps of his boots, Liam sensed an unfamiliar weight in the night, a presence that was patient, deliberate, and invisible. Stepping onto the trail, the path through the heather and rocky outcrops seemed ordinary at first. The crunch of gravel beneath his boots was the only sound, yet the mist played tricks on his eyes, obscuring trees and rocks, shaping shadows into human forms that vanished whenever he blinked. He paused to consult his map, unaware of the white Land Rover parked silently near the trail's edge, half hidden by fog. Vincent Malley, recently transferred to a high-security facility but still free through accomplices, had orchestrated the night's hunt from afar, using the spine as a networked stage for predators who understood the road's secrets. Chloe Harper's testimony had led to his incarceration, yet the message of the spine lingered, a cycle of fear and control that waited for those unaware of its rules. As Liam ascended the rocky slope, a faint whistle echoed across the valley, a low, almost melodic signal that seemed out of place amidst the rugged terrain. He froze, scanning the mist-shrouded mountainsides. Another whistle followed, closer this time, moving through the fog as if circling him. Heart hammering, he adjusted the strap of his backpack and kept moving, rationalizing the sounds as hikers or hunters familiar with the trail. Yet each step seemed mirrored. Footprints appeared briefly in the mud, only to vanish in the next mist swirl. The path that had seemed simple now twisted unnaturally in Liam's perception, the landmarks shifting subtly, disorienting him. The highlands were alive tonight, he realized, aware, and he was merely a participant in a ritual he did not yet understand. The first real encounter came near a narrow ravine. A figure emerged from the fog, tall, wearing a black raincoat with a hood that obscured its face, hands tucked inside gloves, movements deliberate and unnervingly silent. Liam instinctively reached for the small trekking axe at his belt. The figure did not approach aggressively, instead, it tilted its head, observing, testing. Liam froze, realizing that the predator was measuring his reactions, assessing his fear, and calculating the level of threat he posed. Then, almost imperceptibly, the figure stepped back into the fog, vanished, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the faint metallic scent of wet steel. Liam's pulse raced as he realized he was being hunted, not randomly, but with intention, and with rules he could not yet decipher. Retreating cautiously, Liam descended toward a small abandoned campsite, the remnants of a burned tent visible through the mist. Inside, charred wood and scattered debris told a silent story of those who had come before. His eyes fell on a deer mask, hanging from a nearby branch, eerily similar to the one Chloe had reported from the Land Cruiser incident. It was an unspoken signal, the spine remembered, the predator communicated, and the rules of the hunt were being reiterated. Liam's mind raced, recalling Chloe's warnings, newspaper reports, and the cryptic message etched onto Harold's car months prior: "See you on the spine." He understood, with dawning horror, that the Devil's Spine was not merely a road, it was a network, a ritualized hunting ground designed to train, test, and consume the unwary. Liam prepared himself for the long night ahead, using the trees and rocks as natural barriers, staying low, avoiding any sound that could betray his location. Every rustle of branches, every dripping puddle, felt magnified in the silence. The fog acted as both shroud and mirror, amplifying his fear and forcing him to navigate using instinct, memory, and intuition. He realized that surviving this night would require more than courage. It would demand the same combination of patience, cunning, and observation that had allowed Chloe Harper to escape the Devil's Stop. The Highlands were patient, they waited. The spine was infinite, and those who traversed it unaware were marked, their fates intertwined with the road's dark legacy. The night deepened as Liam pressed through the mist-laden highlands, senses on high alert. Every rustle of heather, every drip of condensation from overhanging branches sounded amplified in the stillness. Shadows shifted in the fog, bending in shapes that mimicked human form. Liam clutched his trekking axe tightly, knuckles white, eyes scanning for the slightest movement. Footprints that seemed too large and deliberate appeared intermittently, disappearing into the fog as if erased by some unseen hand. The realization struck him with a cold clarity: he was no longer a hiker wandering the mountains, he was prey. The first confrontation came near a moss-covered stone wall. A tall figure stepped from the fog, wearing a black raincoat and the familiar deer mask. Its presence was deliberate, silent, and unnervingly still, as if assessing Liam's every reaction. Liam froze, heart hammering, and the predator tilted its head, tilting the invisible balance of power. It did not strike immediately. It stalked, circling, forcing Liam to retreat carefully, step by step, each movement calculated. Liam realized that the predator's intent was psychological as much as physical. The stalking itself was a weapon, each pause a measure of fear, each movement a test of instinct. Using the highland terrain to his advantage, Liam ducked behind boulders and fallen logs, carefully masking the sounds of his movement. The forest itself seemed complicit. The fog hung low, muffling sound and shrouding shapes, while the uneven ground forced him to move cautiously. Every snap of a twig beneath his boots seemed like a signal to the predator, which always appeared slightly ahead or behind, never fully revealing itself. He recalled Chloe Harper's account, the improvised restraints, the hidden compartments, the burned VW camper, and understood with a shiver that the spine was a network of traps, practiced methods, and ritualized terror. Survival required using the terrain, patience, and quick thinking to outmaneuver someone who knew both. As passed with Liam maneuvering through rocks and bracken, the deer-masked figure always just at the edge of perception. The fog shifted, thickening and thinning unpredictably, playing tricks on his eyes. Then, in a small clearing, he glimpsed movement, a white Land Rover, its engine silent, doors closed, yet ominously present. Nearby, footprints indicated the predator had circled him, leaving the message clear: this was no random encounter. The vehicle, modified with hidden compartments, served as a base for monitoring prey, just as Chloe had described months earlier. Liam understood instinctively that his night would become a strategic battle. The predator tested reactions, gauged fear, and controlled the environment with meticulous precision. Drawing from every ounce of mental and physical stamina, Liam used misdirection, moving unpredictably, doubling back along false paths, slipping into shadows, and leveraging the fog to mask his movements. Each step was tense, each breath deliberate. The distant howl of a Gila dog echoed through the mountains, growing closer, its senses acute but deceived by Liam's instinctive mud camouflage. He realized that the spine's network extended beyond physical threats. Psychological manipulation, environmental advantage, and trained animal companions all contributed to the predator's system of control. Liam's mind raced, forming strategies and contingency plans, aware that a single misstep could result in the same fate that had befallen James Harper and countless others before him. By midnight, Liam reached a ridge overlooking a small, abandoned campsite, the remnants of a burned tent and scattered debris glinting faintly in the fog. A deer mask hung from a branch, identical to those reported by Chloe. This silent marker confirmed his suspicion: the predator had been here, documenting, controlling, and reinforcing the rules of the hunt. The fog thickened as Liam crouched low, realizing that he was not merely fleeing but participating in a ritual designed to test survival instincts to their absolute limit. Every sound, every movement, every visual cue was a potential signal or trap. The highlands, once familiar and inviting, had transformed into a labyrinth of terror, with Liam at its center. The fog thickened into an almost tangible wall, obscuring Liam's vision and amplifying every sound: the rustle of leaves, the drip of condensation, even the faint clatter of distant rocks. The deer-masked predator appeared again, emerging from the mist like a shadow incarnate. This time, its movements were deliberate and swift, cutting off Liam's path along the ridge. Liam's heart hammered, his breaths came shallow and fast. He gripped his trekking axe, aware that a direct confrontation could mean death, yet any hesitation might also seal his fate. The predator tilted its head, silently commanding attention, and for a moment, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Liam ran, zigzagging through the bracken and fallen branches, using the fog and uneven terrain to his advantage. The predator matched his movements with uncanny precision, always staying just at the edge of perception. Every snapped twig, every displaced rock was a signal of the predator's presence. Liam ducked behind a massive boulder as the predator paused momentarily, then continued its silent pursuit, never breaking the rules of this deadly hunt. The highlands were merciless, soft ground threatened twisted ankles, marshy patches could trap a foot, yet Liam relied on his instincts, honed by months of hiking, survival training, and sheer terror. At the edge of a small clearing, Liam spotted a faint glow, the remnants of a lantern someone had abandoned months ago. He ducked low, sliding behind rocks, and noticed the white Land Rover partially hidden among the fog and heather. The vehicle's engine was silent, yet it radiated menace, a base for the predator's observation. The deer mask, once hanging from a branch, had been removed, replaced by a new marker, a small, weathered piece of wood with scratches forming a crude arrow pointing deeper into the highlands. The message was clear: continue, or be consumed. Liam realized that this hunt was not merely physical, it was psychological, a test of endurance, wit, and nerve. As Liam maneuvered through the highland labyrinth, navigating through marshes and rocky slopes, always aware that a single mistake could be fatal. The predator's heeler dog approached cautiously, but Liam had covered himself in mud and debris, masking scent. The dog's paws scuffed lightly, confused, and it retreated, leaving Liam a narrow path of escape. At dawn, Liam emerged near a minor forest road, exhausted, soaked, and trembling, yet alive. The highlands stretched behind him like an unbroken shadow, a place of death, fear, and ritualized terror. The deer-masked predator was gone, leaving only the faint traces of footprints, the Land Rover partially hidden, and a chilling reminder: the spine remembered all who entered. The aftermath was both relief and revelation. Local authorities, having coordinated with Chloe Harper and forensic teams, examined the remnants of the Land Rover and campsite. Liam's account, combined with the burned VW camper, the missing Ford Sierra, and the cryptic deer masks, painted a chilling picture of a predator network operating in the highlands. Vincent Malley remained imprisoned, yet the signs were clear: accomplices, or a larger system, continued the hunt. In the days following, Liam received an anonymous postcard. On the front, the